Welcome back to Stay with Kay Daily, your internet's favorite mental health bestie. I want to discuss the Backrooms movie and go to more of a deeper dive of what I gained from watching the movie. I watched it about 3 times now because the first time I watched it for what it is. The second time I actually took the time to actually think about it. Third time made more sense to me than when I watched it first and second time. So I want to give more of an interpretation of what I gained from the movie. Maybe you can relate. Maybe you can give me your perspective of what you thought about the movie. I feel like it definitely relates to mental health more on like a deeper level than what you're actually seeing in front of you. All right, this is a spoiler alert. I'm just going to tell you a little backstory about what the movie is about so you kind of understand where I'm going with it. If you don't want to know, definitely go ahead and click off now. Let's go ahead and get into today's video. The main character's name is Clark. He owns a failing furniture store, but honestly, he wants to be an architect at heart, but because of how his life turned out, he ends up kind of working, the normal matrix of working a 9 to 5 and trying to make money to not only provide for himself, but also for his wife and I guess also a failing relationship. So one night he discovers a portal in his store's basement, which leads him directly into this backrooms area that he's never seen before and has never really ran into since he's been working at his furniture store. So as he discovers the back rooms in the basement of his furniture store, he becomes obsessed with mapping out the area because it doesn't lead to just one room. It leads to multiple rooms throughout the whole back rooms environment. And because he's an architect, he wants to learn more about why he's never discovered this before and where do all these rooms lead to, even if there is the end to all the rooms. So while he's trying to figure out where all these rooms leads to, he ends up dragging his employees, like his assistant manager and her boyfriend, into finding more about these back rooms. And he ends up telling his therapist about it because that's probably the only person he has really to talk to about what's going on in his mind, or he feels like somebody that can really understand him. But in the midst of telling his therapist, he thinks that the therapist thinks that he's crazy. So his therapist ends up getting dragged into these back rooms, which ends up turning into more of a deeper dive into the reality of what the back rooms actually is. What are these back rooms? So it's not just like an empty maze, like you're just walking around trying to figure out how to get out or try to discover different rooms. It's more so a manifestation of the universe's subconscious, which ends up taking the universe's reality that you see and pulling bits and pieces and wrapping them into like impossible structures that were from the original look of it all. So all in all, the backrooms basically represents the emotional baggage of those who wander inside. So it's not just Clark's reality, it's your reality, it's her reality, it's his reality. And just reconstructing and distorting the memories of traumas that people are stuck in that loop of what they're going through internally. That's what the backrooms represents. And towards the end of the movie, the only person who survives is the therapist. But turns out the therapist is in more so an experimental environment when she is led to this company that manages the backrooms to try to figure out why the backrooms do what they do. Why do they shape these different realities of the people who enter these backrooms, and how can they figure out how to, I guess, control the backrooms? So this company is basically kind of asking her questions, therapist, as to like, what brought you here? What have you seen? What are your thoughts about it? And I don't know, just more about what the human mind has to offer anytime anyone enters these backrooms. All right, so all in all, that's what the movie is about. And after watching it 3 times, here is my interpretation of what I think the back room represents. I got my handy dandy notebook, so I'm going to talk about basically, my perception of what I think the back room represents versus what the movie showed. After watching the movie Backrooms, I feel like for the average day-to-day person, it's a representation of how consumed you can become of your own thoughts, which leads to different rooms that you can create inside your mind of different traumas that's happened to you. And the more you consume those traumas, you allow it to eat yourself until you give up on your own aspirations in life, which I believe which happened to Clark, because if he was willing to be an architect at one point point in life, and now he ends up being a furniture store owner. Obviously, there was something in his life that made him be like, unfortunately, I'm not able to become an architect, so I have to settle for being a furniture store manager, which is something that he really didn't want to do. In the movie, he talked about how he had to be a furniture store owner because he was supporting not only himself, but also his wife, who wasn't really interested in working because she chose to go back to school. So for him, it was like, well, if you're choosing to go back to school, then someone has to be responsible for taking care of the bills. And since you're not working, that person has to be me. So I have to put my dreams on the back burner of being an architect because you decided that instead of not working to help me, you wanted to go to school. Which, as you can tell with when he speaks with the therapist about it, he is very resentful that his wife chose that path, which I believe she ends up leaving Clark because of that. Him having to not only take care of her, but him having to miss out on his dreams of being an architect to, basically, just like all of us have to take care of the lifestyle that we have to upkeep instead of our dreams. With the reality that many of us have faced, we have to create those back rooms in our minds to kind of cope with what we're going through on a day-to-day, especially if you're not living out dream that you wanted to live, whether that be an architect or a painter or a streamer. You have to do things that you don't want to do in order to get where you want to go. I believe from a mental standpoint of view, that creates the back room in our minds, which begins to distort your reality from the outside world and begins to creep internally due to an untrained mind of not feeling safe, secured, and being confident to face your fears alone without needing someone physically present to help you to the next level in life. I feel like when we get to that point in our lives where not only we get stuck in our brain and create our own reality from a external point of view, I believe that's when you have to have faith in yourself to be able to project your new experiences in life. For Clark and many of us, we create back rooms in our brains or in our minds or subconsciously to show that you're comfortable staying where you're at, which is the sadness, the depression, the anxiety due to not knowing or willing to work on yourself to change, which a lot of people are afraid to go deeper into who they are and what they want to be and how they could become that person they want to be in the future. So with that being said, I can definitely relate to this movie, and that's kind of like my interpretation of where I get it from. A lot of people don't know how to sit with themselves quietly and really internalize, I don't like where I am in life. How can I get to the next step? I don't know how to get there. And a lot of people don't know how to get there. And I think it starts with yourself. When you get to a point in life where you don't like where you are, you don't like person who you are, you really have to sit down with yourself and be like, how can I become better than where I was yesterday? I don't like my life right now. So how can I figure out how to be that person that I want to be? And until you come to that realization, then you'll never understand how to hone in on what truly matters to you. Whether you do that by yourself or whether you find a therapist that can help you get there, or if you have a friend who is willing to not just be a yes man, but to really challenge your thoughts on like, okay, you want to be the best streamer in the world. Great. Awesome. You want to do content creation. Okay, perfect. Or you want to be the best employee at your job. Even though that's someone else's dream, some people are comfortable with doing that. How are you going to be that person? How are you going to take that time to really find out who you are, to change yourself in order to project that in your reality? Once you figure that out, you're unstoppable. I feel like for me, what helped me get through that was therapy. Now, don't get me wrong. I enjoy talking to myself internally, but it comes to a point where like you're in the back rooms, you're kind of sitting with that trauma in your brain, or you're talking to yourself and you're recreating your own reality. And that's how people get PTSD, not just from what they experience externally. You started to internalize that and then you process that as your reality when really that isn't your reality. I believe the Backrooms movie was a physical representation of how the brain works when you're stuck in your own like internal reality. And once you're able to figure it out, then you're able to escape the matrix or just who you are as a person. So for the Backrooms movie, I personally enjoyed it because I was like, wow, the first time I watched it, I was like, I kind of understand, but I'm not really internalizing what it is. By the second and third time, I was like, oh, okay. So this is basically just like I said, a physical representation of what the mental can do to us, creating a bunch of endless backrooms or a loop of things in our brain that can keep us trapped in here. And for Clark, it got to a point in the movie when he was with his therapist and he was kind of like, I actually like being in here. And I was like, so he's actually comfortable with his reality or being stuck in his brain to know that since nobody understands me and I'm the only person who understands myself, I'd rather just stay trapped in these back rooms in my brain because that's the only place where I feel the most comfortable at. And that's a lot of people in today's reality. A lot of people are comfortable with being in their mind. And I'm one of those people, especially when you haven't found your people to kind of like go to and like talk about things that honestly a lot of people don't understand. So that's my interpretation of the Backrooms movie. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section below what you guys think about it. And if you're going to go see the movie, hopefully this was a great sticky note for you to kind of be like, even though I wasn't thinking about going to see the movie, now I want to go see it. A lot of people didn't understand it, or a lot of people didn't like it, which I can understand why. But if you're willing to kind of explore differently than what is being shown to you at hand, because like right now you see a hand, but right now I could be like explain it to you more differently. Like this isn't just a hand, this is a hand to the future. Like if you see it like that, if you're one of those people who think really deep, that's what the Backrooms movie is about. So I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, you guys.